Well, Sindile Vabanza, my friend, is here. Welcome to Verity.
Thank you very much, Roman.
And the point of this is that no one actually wins.
Okay.
It's a podcast where ideas are fleshed out, and we let the audience decide for themselves what they want to believe.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Great. So you're a writer,
Yes.
professional writer,
Yes.
and you get paid for it, unlike many journalists. It's true though. Some people write for free, and if you read their stuff, you can see why they write for free, because no one will pay for
dear.
it.
The fourth estate.
The fourth estate, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, what do you write about? What piques your interest in writing?
Anything that takes my fancy, but I like to cover politics and just stuff in popular culture. I'd like to do a bit of sport. That's something I want to get into.
Sports writing.
Yeah, but more football. I don't care about that. The sports
Is that the one where they score a try or a wicket? I don't do sports.
Yeah, no. The way they score the goal, but it's
Score the goal. Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty much that, and then I'm trying to write a book now.
Oh yes.
So put together a book, not too long, something that people can read, enjoy, something spicy.
In South Africa, though, I mean, you'll be a bestseller if you sell 1,000 copies.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fine. I want to put something out there. You got to start somewhere, and then we can see what happens with future projects.
So the only reason I know you is because you got very insightful Facebook statuses. You post about, I don't know, between 5 and 10 a day.
Yeah, on the move.
Like you're sort of like Donald Trump, but you don't say sad and don't call Kim Jong-un funny names on your Facebook status. But it appears that you have this epiphany of some sort, and then you just write it down on Facebook as a sort of way. Is it note taking or to keep it in memory?
I don't know. When I was in high school, embarrassing. I kept a diary. And then it's kind of morphed into that. I used to write quite a bit, just jot down ideas and whatever else and whatever I'm thinking. And then it kind of morphed into that on Facebook. I don't know, it's kind of changed because there was that one status I put up, I think it was 2 years ago, about Penny Sparrow.
Yeah.
And then I had 1,000 friend requests.
I was one of them, perhaps.
I don't remember. It was a bit more overwhelming. I mean, some of those people I've shed because they found out I'm not, far left.
You're not woke enough, Sindile.
I've been told a lot of weird things, like one white man, literally one straight white man, Christian white man, the epitome of privileged. Literally, when he was angry with me, he was like, "You're privileged. That's why you don't want South Africa to change." I was like, I was even threatened by another one. You would know him. He's one of my friends on Facebook.
A white man? Another
yes.
One. Oh, yeah?
You remember Walter. He basically just threatened me because he went on one of my posts and he said I'm a rape apologist.
Oh, is this Walter that owns polo horses?
Yes.
And then he talks about structural privilege and structural racism.
Yeah, and then he threatened to take me to court, so I made fun of him. I trolled him mercilessly. Yeah. And then another white guy came on my inbox and was like, "What you did to Walter was not cool." I was like, "He called me a rape apologist." "Oh no, it wasn't cool. You be nicer to people." I'm like,
you should be nice, indeed. You must, we live in a vanilla world. Not vanilla in terms of colour. I'm talking about flavour, right? Everyone must be as inoffensive and vanilla as possible. It's what society wants for us.
Oh, that would be a dull world. That would be a very dull world. There's something to a bit of meanness in the world. It keeps everything interesting.
Well, I mean, personally, I think life is pure suffering from start to end. And so I can't remember who said it. You are born alone, you die alone, and then you just have sensory, characteristics of you just have sensory. I can't remember. It's Naval on Twitter. Okay. Great guy. He's like, you just have these senses throughout your life, then you die, and what you make of that is up to you.
I'm on board a little bit with that, but I wouldn't take it full nihilistic.
It's sort of fatalist, but it's also empowering in a way. That
it is. You need to know because there's 800 million people who are starving.
Yes.
25 million Indian children who are prostitutes.
And there's almost 7 billion people that never self-actualize.
Very true as well.
And a lot of people underestimate that. So while we talk about big ideas about the world, other people are just like, all I'm doing today is dropping the kids off, going to work, try to survive till 4 or 5 o'clock, pick up the kids. Then I go home and cook, and I just want to watch Friends
And
till
drink.
10 p.m.
And drink
my whiskey. And
drink
then,
wine.
And then the cycle just repeats itself.
Yeah.
And this is what they call living.
And maybe you have a bit of a segue where you go on holiday.
To some godforsaken place like Margate. I've been there. It's a proper shithole.
I spent some growing up years in Margate. I have mixed feelings about the place because I don't know. The one cool thing about Margate is that now that I'm older, it helps clarify some things about racism in Margate. Because there was a couple of experiences when I was younger, and it made me think. Because I was sitting there as a kid on the beach, and I was having a vanilla ice cream. Like these older Afrikaans kids, maybe like 19 or 20, they walked up to me, they looked at me, they looked at my ice cream, and they were like, "Ooh, your ice cream's dirty," and then they walked away laughing. And I was just like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, a couple of weeks later, literally, I'm walking behind my brother. There's a wimpy down on Margate Beach. And across from there's a bar, but it's upstairs. And he's walking, and they literally chucked a beer on him, and they laughed. And it was hectic shit like that.
Like the young white guys?
Yeah. Hectic shit like that. And so when you have to confront that stuff, you have to think about stuff. So you have to think, gee, this is what people are putting towards me. They've got white skin, and it was specifically Afrikaners.
Yeah.
So I had to think about it, and I had to be like, gee, what do I think about people now? What do I think about people who are white?
Yeah.
What do I think about Afrikaners? And so long story short, I've come to the conclusion that you judge people as individuals, because that's what I want to be judged as. Long story short. I mean, you can't really put the sins of everyone else on one person.
You can't collectivize. Well, I mean, you can collectivize, but firstly, it's a terrible argument. And secondly, you just don't get context and nuance.
Very true.
Right, I mean, if we can... how many... In Nazi Germany, for example, there were maybe 10% of the population who were real Nazis, who actually believed in it, and the rest just got swept up in it. And a lot of them didn't agree with it at all. But there was economic booming times and all sorts of things. Germany was Nazi, but the core was 10% of the population, really. And they controlled the narrative, and they controlled everything. It's been like apartheid here. I really wonder how many people were actually properly racist during apartheid.
Oh, I don't know.
White people. I wonder.
I don't know. I think as well people get stuck on what the definition of racism is, because you see it now when people are caught up in all of this thing about whiteness. I remember on Facebook I was lambasted because I was like, what is the point of you having a t-shirt? Do you remember that "fuck white people" t-shirt?
Yes, at Wits, I think.
I think so. And I asked people, and I was like, what is the point of that? And people were like, no, we're expressing our pain, our black pain. Which I was like, okay, fine, I get that. But I put this challenge to them, and I was like, if you're a man and a white woman is racist to you, are you allowed to call them a white bitch? And he said yes. And I was like, in your anger, you've now become a sexist.
Oh, right.
Do you see the problem there?
Yeah.
Do you see the problem with your anger being unchecked? Because it's a moral question. Are you justified in doing things if you are angry? Is there a limit to what you can do when you're angry? So, for example, if you're a woman who's been raped, are you allowed to go and do bad things to all men? Which is a good question, because...
Yeah, well, I think victimhood is quite a strong commodity these days. So we tend to see that people who have suffered, or purportedly suffered, we give them a lot more leeway when they do things. Like the H&M debacle, I think, is a perfect example of that. You had a lot of, again, it was political, you had a lot of EFF supporters who felt, supposedly, extremely angry and anxious about this advert with the black child with the coolest monkey in the jungle hoodie on. And we give them a lot more, if it was white people, I think it would be mocked entirely. If white people went into H&M and trashed it for the best cracker in whatever, the clan, if they had a hoodie like that, H&M, I think people would mock that. It's sort of like the Charlottesville white supremacists, right?
I don't know. I don't think white South Africans would actually go that far. I think you'd get right-wingers in terms of like, you know, come now, Steve.
No, man, we just boycott, man.
I don't.
I'm only half white. People think I'm white. I'm actually half white. No, white people just boycott, like Spur.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think. I think a lot of black people don't actually agree with the H&M thing either.
No.
I have two thoughts about that. Even if it was racist, which I don't think is very clear, because when you have those kind of photo shoots and people are trying on different outfits.
Yeah.
People are paid by the hour.
I mean, that's what the mother said, right?
Yeah.
He had dozens of outfits that day.
People are paid by the hour and people are just doing things quickly. It's just helter-skelter.
Sure.
Even if it was, there's certain things that you do within the bounds of the law. You don't go around breaking the law and trashing things because, weirdly enough, I said this on Facebook, the people who clean up are poor black women. Right. And I was like, well then, what then? But also, the whole H&M thing showed me a thing about the EFF is that when it suits them, they'll break the rule of law.
Yeah, they're a destructive force.
They're a destructive force. The same thing with supporting the coup in Zimbabwe. They're more than happy to do so.
Yeah.
When Morgan Tsvangirai, the EFF wasn't formed yet, but when Morgan Tsvangirai was set to win the elections, Julius Malema was like, no, Robert Mugabe, so on and so forth. He ignored the fact that Mugabe was torturing Tsvangirai. He ignored the fact that political violence was being used in Zimbabwe. No, that's fine. It suits my ends. It suits my nationalism. And I was like, that's what you have. So it didn't surprise me, funnily enough, just as a slight segue, it didn't surprise me when Julius met with the NG Kerk. Because Afrikaner identity politics, Black identity politics, same WhatsApp group. It's like Mangope and Tablanche, tribalists, same WhatsApp group. If it suits them, they'll be destructive.
Well, it's a bit like, do you know the Hotep movement? Hotep. It's like this sort of, it's like they're black nationalists, but not nationalists. They're like sort of, we can do better if we keep to ourselves. Like sort of separatist movement.
Like Umar Johnson, that guy who's purportedly a doctor, Umar Johnson. I saw his interview.
So the Hotep movement want to get in bed with the alt-right movement. Because they're like, you white supremacists, we black supremacists, we share the same goal, just different skin color, but fuck it, let's get together.
Oh no, I've seen something with Umar Johnson where he says people who date and have sex and marry across the color line, it's a political thing.
Oh, really?
That choice is saying what you feel about black women. Okay.
So, I mean, let's get back to basics, though. I mean, what do you feel about race relations in this country?
Oh.
Like, I know it's very broad.
It's very broad. I'll see if I can get to it in a couple of angles. I think people misunderstand each other a lot. Because in varsity, I studied communications and psychology. I think a lot of it gets lost in what's called the static, just the noise of what's happening in South Africa. So people interpret things through that lens.
Sure, they got filters on.
They got so many filters on, and so people never get to sit down and talk to each other. One of the things I have tried to do on Facebook is try and present things from different angles. So someone like me, for example, I have friends across the spectrum, not just race, but age, socioeconomic class, political ideology. So I try to present what people in Manenberg are thinking. I've got friends who run a coffee shop there called Yoma Sekombes. They also do like soccer games there. Very good. Brings the community together, kind of lessens the violence, that sort of thing. But I've got friends who are farmers, who are white. So I try and bring across that perspective as well. So I try and bring across that perspective of suburban people, people in the rural areas, people in the townships, and just try and humanize people. Because I think a lot of the time, people are the same across many things. There's just small, and this sounds really kumbaya, but there's small differences on the surface. If you think about it, like just here in Joburg for the weekend, Middle class white people and black people do exactly the same things on the weekend. They drink, they have braais, they go clubbing, they do so on and so forth. It's just different spaces.
Sure.
But people are doing the exact same thing. If you go to somebody's house, people are playing PlayStation or whatever. I think it's just, it's a mindset change for a lot of people. Because I think people are very scared of saying the wrong thing, which is the first thing.
Well, we've got this shaming culture that's getting very prevalent at the moment.
Exactly, because people, I think there's a difference between people who say the wrong thing and they're not aware. Because that's a skill I've picked up over the years, is seeing the difference between people who just say something where you just say, listen, dude, saying this, don't say that to me. It's a respect thing.
Sure.
Like, don't say that to me because that's disrespectful. You bring them aside and you talk or whatever. If they don't want to listen, then you tell them, fuck you.
Yeah.
Basically, because there always has to be respect between people. And then there's just shitty people who like stirring.
Yeah.
Because I learned that when I was in Margate. Because you'd have people, you have certain groups of white people, like, who will literally go up to you if you're a black person and be like, oh, you're a monkey, or what about all your poor brothers who are toy-toying? And I remember the one time I was walking past a house going to a friend's house, and this guy literally in the street, he shouted across from me, and he was like, oh, why don't you tell all your brothers to stop toy-toying? And I looked at him and I was like, who are my brothers? He's like, those guys there. I didn't realize my mom had so many children. Oh, you know what I mean? And I was like, because I'm disrespectful, I was like, I don't know what you mean, Gwers. And he was pissed off. And then I started trolling him.
His name was Henny, not Gwers.
Or whatever. And he literally, that stopped him in his tracks.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't, like, sway me. A lot of people just try and troll each other. And if you know how to respond to it, like, it kind of dies down.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people just take it.
Yeah, a lot of people take it very, very personally.
Yeah.
And they think, oh no, this is what white people do. And I think it's that sort of misunderstanding that kind of gets conflated, and people build up these ideas of each other.
But how prevalent is that like overtly racist culture these days?
Well, it's not prevalent here in Joburg, because where we live, it's not prevalent.
That's my filter. I've lived in Joburg my whole life.
Yeah.
Okay, I grew up on a farm, slightly different, but I don't see racist incidents like every day. If I notice it, like it's like marks itself on memory. It's like, geez, that happened. I can't imagine that happened. Like if in Joburg, if like the estate agent Vicky, someone or other,
Momberg,
who called the police like all sorts of disgusting racial names, like that makes like huge news.
It does, because I think here's my theory on Joburg. I think Joburg's 20 years ahead of the rest of this country, in my opinion. Because when I moved to Joburg, that also kind of changed my mindset. Because I think, how do I put this? I'll explain it. I think white people in Joburg are different, to be honest, just as a general overview.
Yeah.
I think you have different relationships. Because I think one of the things I find when I go to other cities is that white people are sometimes quite standoffish, like, why the fuck would he talk to me type of vibe, you know? Like that sort of like, you
suspicious.
know, because I don't necessarily make conversation when I'm outside of Joburg with white people. I don't necessarily say, oh, hi, how you doing, whatever. Because there's been times where people have been like, and they just looked at me up and down like, why the fuck would you talk to me? And I've just been like, gee, that's a bit weird. Or you're walking, even in a mall, and like, oh, I will be startled, like, oh, gee, he was...
Really?
Yeah, I'm serious.
But we live in Africa. Like, it's weird. Like, African people, like, are the majority. Like, why is it weird to think that they're among us, you know?
It's
like
weird.
Some alien race.
It is weird as hell. And I mean, I remember the one time I was hung over at a Wimpy in Margate. And I'm looking across at the car because I'm out of it. And I'm just trying to get some water. And literally this white girl, she's there, she looks at me, she's like, well, how dare you look at me, blah, 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 blah. And she started crying. And it caused a huge thing. And it was an uncomfortable experience where I had to explain to people like, look, I'm hungover, shut the fuck up. I'm looking at the car and I'm just looking into space and I'm trying not to think. Calm down. And it was such an uncomfortable experience.
But how does that, how can I explain? Like, how do you not get over that? I'm not saying you should get over it, but how do you like judge your life? Like, how do you not become a bit resentful, or how do you not become a bit more militant?
I think there's two things to it. From me personally, I can't speak to anybody else. One is you have to make a decision. I think I listened to a lot of Martin Luther King speeches. Let's put aside some of the other stuff he did, you know, with the cheating and whatever.
That's irrelevant to his ideas.
You have to decide for yourself what kind of person you are. And that can't be affected by outside forces. Nobody can make you racist. You either are or you aren't. Somebody's mean to you, they're mean to you, and that's their thing. So for me, I had to figure out for myself what kind of person I want to become, what kind of country I want to live in. And the second thing that inoculates you is you have relationships with white people. Yeah. So now I have quite a number of white friends. I've dated a number of white people. I mean, I was best man at one of my best friends' weddings. He's white. I mean, you can't have a resentful view of white people if you know a lot of white people, if you've been to their homes, you know their kids, you know their spouses, you know who they are as people, you know their struggles. You can't really do that if you have those sort of relationships, because the strange thing is that when people get on Facebook and say, oh, all white people are shitty or whatever, it's real to you because you've got a friend. I've got white friends who've adopted black children, for example, and they're in that middle space. And you have to think about them because they're in Cape Town. So you have to think about them and you have to think about their children. You have to think about how they process that. And it's the same thing with how, if I turn it around, how I think about racism. If somebody's racist towards me, I have to think about, well, why are they racist, firstly? Secondly, I have to think about whether that racism was clumsy, because I think there is a clumsy kind of racism that people have. When people congregate like a lot amongst each other, they tend to form stupid ideas about each other. Like, I've seen black women who think white men are never violent. Because they see it on TV. They just think white men hit walls and stuff. And they don't hit. Because they're not around white dudes.
Sure.
There was a black woman I know who thinks all white men treat their girlfriends well and
doesn't she know Oscar Pistorius?
See my point. And she told me that once, and I was like, I know a lot of white dudes, and some of them do, some of them don't.
Yeah.
They're humans.
Depends on the person.
And it depends on the person. I was like, you're just not exposed to people. So that's why you have that idea in your head. It works for both positive and negative stereotypes.
So is that why Joburg is 20 years ahead? Because there's a lot more intermingling amongst like races and ethnicities and things like that.
Because I think in Joburg you have choice. I don't think Joburg's a kumbaya place where everybody's just holding hands, but you have choices about what you're going to do and who you can hang out with, and nobody is going to like give you issues for it, because one, Joburg's a diverse province. You have lots of ethnicities.
Yeah.
So half the time, actually, black people talk English to each other. Because if I'm talking to a Venda guy, I don't know how to speak Venda. Right. He doesn't know how to speak Xhosa or Zulu. So you end up hearing black people speaking English to each other.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And also in the neighborhoods, because there's lots of like upwardly mobile black people in neighborhoods, your neighbor's white. I mean, half my neighbors are white. So, I mean, you can't have these dumb ideas. People's kids play together.
Well, I mean, you can have them, but to express them is like a bit...
It's harder.
It is harder to have
And
them.
it's harder to hold stupid ideas in Joburg, because...
Especially when you meet people that completely rip apart your worldview, right?
Even in the workplace. You know, you can both hate your boss.
Yes. Like, I hate it like on Facebook when someone says... It's always a white woman for some reason. They go like to a petrol station or whatever, and it says, "Oh, Elias, the petrol attendant, did this wonderful thing. Please share." And he did. I don't know what he did. Like he changed the tire or something, and it's like, look how great, and we were rainbow. I'm like, no, fuck, just give the guy $200, say thank you, pay him for his time, give him like money for helping you, and then get on your way. But don't act like this is like a unique event in South Africa. Oh fuck, like, and I know that they mean well. I know they mean well. But if someone helps me on the side of the road, like someone does help me, like not anymore, because I know how to change a tire now. But before, right? I mean, like a taxi driver stopped and helped me. I'm not like, oh, this is like the most wonderful, gracious thing ever, and Mandela's smiling. No, I gave the guy money because I said, thank you so much for your time. Can I give you like 150 Rand? He's like, well, you don't need to, but yeah, sure, thank you. I gave it to him, shook hands, and then we get on the way, as like normal people in a normal city would do. It's not a miracle.
It's the thing that annoyed me about those Joe Burger posts. You know, that tell us what you like about white people.
Yeah.
Tell us what you like about black people.
Well, what you really wanted to know about.
Yeah. Okay, to an extent I understand it, because I think once you get outside some of the big cities, people's behaviors tend to be the same because they clog up together.
Oh, sure.
But I kind of hated the principle behind it, because I think your skin color, you shouldn't be able to tell anything important.
Once again, it's collectivism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it was, hey, black people, what are your burning questions about white people? And then like all of them were like, why do you wear these funny safari suits? And I'm like, I don't wear a fucking safari suit. I don't wear like this khaki bullshit. Like, come now.
Oh, they talk about the Afrikaans.
Yeah, say that about farmers or like people who live in rural areas who happen to be Afrikaans. But don't say that about like white people in general.
Okay, yeah.
Like, it's just a small thing, but like there's a misconception that we all have these khaki fucking two-tone shirts. And I've never worn one in my life, and I don't intend to.
Yeah, I think so, and I think
so. Perhaps it deepens the stereotypes rather than than opens them up, right?
I definitely concur with that, but I think even within that, I think you need to have categories. So, for example, I made this argument to people, and some people were not too pleased. I think it's okay in relationships if somebody wants to stick to their own race, but I think we should frown upon it in friendships.
Oh, right.
And I'll make this argument this way.
Okay.
Relationships are deeply, deeply personal, in the sense that attraction is a very complicated thing.
Yeah.
So, for example, people choose things based on physical characteristics. Yes, you may not want to be with someone of another color because of their phenotype or their physical characteristics. And I think that's okay. People don't want to date short men or tall men. There's even men in this world who will date morbidly obese women only because of something that happened in their childhood. And that's okay because it's consensual. Yes, they discriminate against skinny women and women with more healthier body sizes, but it is their choice and it contributes to their happiness. And in that sense, I think even though race is really explosive, I think people should be allowed to. The same goes for...
Yeah, one would think.
It's the same argument. It mirrors, it's two sides of the same coin. It's the very same reason people should be allowed to date outside of their race and whomever they want. It's because it's deeply personal. It's none of your fucking business. And we can't regulate who we're attracted to.
Sure.
In that sense.
So why don't you apply that thinking to friendships then?
Because often the reason people don't go across friendships is because with friendships there's no physicality involved. You're not fucking your friends, you're not kissing your friends.
Depends what kind of friends you've got.
True, you're not fucking your friends, you're not doing anything personal. Friendships is based on common interests, and what I've found usually is that people who don't want to be friends give lame excuses. So you'll have people who say, oh no, we don't share the same culture. And I'm like, how do you know? We don't have the same interest as them. And I'm like, by you saying that, you're saying because of his skin color, this person cannot share the same interests as you. Which, by the way, fundamentally is what racism is. It's
Sure.
prejudice based on color.
Yeah.
So that's what
At the most basic level, yeah.
Yes. So I'm not saying you don't tell people they can't, but I think socially it's something that you frown upon, because I think it's different in that sense to relationships. Because I had a classmate who was blonde, long, leggy blonde, only dated black guys when I was in
Really?
varsity. Only. It shocked the hell out of me.
Were her parents disappointed?
Funny, no, actually, her parents
Good.
were quite liberal.
Oh, that's good.
She just was like, I don't do white guys. I didn't ask too much because
Yeah.
I thought.
But it's like Robert De Niro, right?
Mm.
Robert De Niro only dates black women. Like that's
So-
his thing. And yeah.
So I was
I
like, that is her thing. Because for me, I'm okay with somebody saying, I don't want to date you because of your skin color. I'm okay with that,
Okay.
personally. Because at the end of the day, do I want to be with someone like that as well? Because it turns around the other way as well.
Sure.
So for me, I think as much as possible, we need to give people freedom to be happy. There's certain things I think we should socially frown upon them. It shouldn't be a legal issue. I just think we should frown upon that socially so people understand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree. Like, I'm huge. I'm a big advocate of choice. And I think if you want to be a racist who only dates within their race group, who only has friends within their race group, I think you should go ahead. I think your life will be less happier or less, how can I explain? Not diverse, but you're going to have a very limited awareness of the world and the people around you.
I agree with
I think it's a negative thing to only worry about your in-group preference.
It is.
It's an echo chamber. It's a circular.
It is, but
echo chamber.
I think it's okay to frown upon certain things. I think
You
so.
want to, yeah.
I
you're
think
welcome
so.
to-
That's
to
my
frown upon
argument.
it.
I think
Okay.
I forward the argument that it should be frowned upon socially. I don't think people should. It's the same thing with racism.
Yeah.
I have a lot of issues with it being made legal, where if somebody is racist, that there's a lot of legal ramifications to it.
Yeah.
I find that quite troubling, but I think socially we should be aware and we should frown upon people who are racist towards other people. I think we should frown upon that, and I think we
Yeah.
should be able to say it's wrong.
Yeah, but I think that happens anyway, right? I mean, if you look at the overt cases of racism, as the estate agent Vicky, someone, she was taken to court. I don't agree with being taken to court, but she won't work again, as far as I'm aware. Or not in the same position she was before. The coffin assault case.
Yeah.
I mean, they got sent to prison 15 years for supposedly attempted murder. They say they were trying to, scare the guy. Of course, I don't condone what they do, but like it was a serious punishment for what they did. I think racism is not tolerated at all, unless it's legal racism, like fair discrimination, and then you get to a point, unfortunately, where only racism against a certain demographic applies and not against another demographic.
Okay.
So I mean, where else in the world do you get political leaders that say we're not going to call for the slaughter of whites just yet? Imagine Donald Trump said that about Hispanics or black Americans. I mean, they will be like outraged completely. Here, we write a strongly worded letter and tell Julius to please stop it. But it's not a huge, major news story.
It isn't.
I mean, if Helen Ziller said that about colours or black people, I mean, she would be buried by now, like way buried.
Well, it's the double standard around what Julius says. Even with his disrespect for the law, some of the stuff he said, when I talk to people who are very EFF, there's a lot of very shaky justifications, but they hold water for people who are in this time in history. So, for example, I had people on my Facebook, some of them varsity students, some of them actually with university degrees, who have jobs, who are like, let's go to this H&M thing. They were in Durban. Let's go to this H&M thing and get involved and teach them a lesson.
Right.
And, at the back of my mind, I was thinking about it, and I was, because their whole argument was, we are forwarding black dignity. I don't know how you forward dignity by trashing things.
And another problem, it's such a bourgeois concept of dignity, That's what like irritates me a lot. 'Cause I think
Okay.
there's
Expand on
insurmountable amount of suffering by black people in this country on a daily basis.
Okay. A lot of it's very economic, but okay.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely economic. But discrimination, not just when people say systemic discrimination, I always roll my eyes a little bit. But the person who gets up at 3, takes a taxi for 3 hours to work at a job that pays $5,000 a month, and then travels back home, it's not systemic discrimination, but I mean that's a very difficult life.
It is.
And it's very difficult to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
That happens every single day.
Yes.
And the EFF finds a hoodie on the internet more offensive
And I
than
don't.
that.
Yeah, I can see why, because the EFF majors on spectacle,
Yeah.
and spectacle, as we've even learned from Donald Trump, spectacle, when people are angry and feel left out, spectacle works. And so my thoughts on that, because there are people, for example, with their helpers. I mean, some people pay their helpers 1,500 Rand a month. And by the way, it's not just white people. Wealthy black people do it too.
Well, Maria came to us from a black family, and she was not very polite about her conditions there. Of course, it doesn't mean anything in the grander scheme of things, but it's a class issue masquerading as a race issue.
It is.
Once again.
It is a very deep class issue, and I think for me, that's why I think politics, more than anything, I say class trumps gender, class trumps race, race trumps gender. That's my view.
Yeah. That's where the Marxists sort of have a point. Yeah, I agree with you.
So for me, the biggest issue in South Africa, because people often, there's this argument made about the issue with South Africa is because of white monopoly capital or so on and so forth. Okay, whatever. Let's put that aside for a minute. One of the major problem we have in this country is that we have lots of undereducated and underskilled people who are not fit for the job market. And as such, we need to find ways in which we can get people to work. It's what's the word? The demographic dividend. We have a lot of young people who can work, but who aren't working. And it can go either of two ways. We can go the way of the Asian economies, the Asian tigers. We put people to work and we see growth and we see improvement in standards of living. Or we can do what we're doing now, which is we can grandstand, we can go for spectacle, and
give free education.
And we can go completely left.
Yeah.
And we can have a situation in which you have lots of young people who don't have work, who are antsy, especially young men who are antsy, and that's where the violence and the very nasty, angry violence comes from. Because in South Africa, it's not just people murder people or rob people.
Yeah.
They torture them. They brutally rape them. And that anger comes from somewhere. It's not happening out of nowhere. And
so where do you think it comes from, like that anger? A lot of people do use like historical context.
I think that's part of it.
I think that's certainly a factor. But I think
present conditions.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that's often under talked about is the violence in lower income communities. I've got a friend in Cape Town who does play therapy with children in Manenberg. And one of the things she was telling me is a lot of people underestimate how prevalent gang rape is in that community. A lot of people underestimate how gang rape of little boys, especially, in that community. Because there is a study, people can look at it on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Boys are more sexually vulnerable than girls in this country. People would be shocked to hear that.
Really?
People can Google that. And what you have in this country then is you have this culture, I think feminists are partly right on this, is that these young little boys are angry, they've been violated, and people are just telling them to suck it up.
Right.
Keep that shit inside.
Yeah. It's not manly to cry.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know
what I mean? They've got a point there. And so you have this situation where you have a lot of angry young men. You have a historical context of violence. You have communities, low-income communities, where there's a lot of violence, where whenever somebody's angry, they take their anger out from their work situation where they've woken up at 5 and maybe Obas treats them badly, and they bring it home and they beat up their wife, they beat up their kids, they drink. So you have all this conflation of issues, which produces angry young men who are often jobless, who are often angry, who often, because they're not upwardly mobile, they often can't get access to women as well, which is why they're angry at women as well, which is why they terrorize young women as well. So you have all these social issues that stem partly from a lot of the social context, but also because of the economics. And for me, that's why it's so important that you fix things from the beginning. So now I have another friend in Cape Town who works, her church has started this organization where they target certain stages of life for young people in Cape Town. So for them, they do early childhood development. Because if you've kind of seen the studies, the first 1,000 days of a child's life are absolutely essential. And they are a predictor of later success, your brain formation, all that kind of stuff. The nutrition the mother gets, they focus on that. They focus on plugging in the gaps in the school system. So some of the tutoring, the education. They focus on skills development with older people, making them more employable. Helping them, with entrepreneurial skills. Plugging in that life gap.
And those small things make like a huge difference in the long run.
They do, because if we concentrate on doing that more in the long term, then I think we can begin to turn around the situation in South Africa. Part of the crime issue is linked to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, our policing is nonsense. That needs to be sorted out. Actually, they scrapped a police university, which they shouldn't have.
You're being very polite. It's not nonsense. It's fairly non-existent.
Exactly. There was a police university that was proposed and started, but they scrapped that because of political infighting.
Well, there was the one thing the apartheid government did well is that the civil service would train professionals. You had a civil servant. There was a college of sorts, a public officials college, where you had to get a degree in administration and management to become a civil servant, anywhere from a clerk to a director general or a minister or something like that. And so they gave you the skills and the knowledge. Scrap that as well, like post 95. So a lot of here's the thing. The problem is the National Party had this one policy which was awful for everyone. Everyone. I mean, I don't say this often, but white people also suffered, right? They couldn't love someone from another race. They couldn't exactly live. They were far better off than the majority of black people. Don't get me wrong. But it was still a national socialist government.
They were Nazis,
right?
basically.
Well, they just didn't commit the genocide. But there were sanctions, and if you had a brother, if you were born in South Africa in 1948 and you had your brother in the Netherlands, in South Africa, with the government being so pro-white, you would still be poorer than your brother in the Netherlands. So even the most pro-white, segregationist, racist government in the world, or maybe not in the world, but in South Africa, white people were still some of the poorest white people in the world. So I mean, that's how shitty this thing was. And what was I saying? Oh yes, so the apartheid state, unfortunately, so we scrapped apartheid, but then we scrapped everything that went along with it. And some of the stuff, especially like the public officers college and things like that, there was a meritocracy of sorts based on race, absolutely, don't get me wrong. But there was a way to get into positions in the state. Where you were competent or fairly competent. It's called the Peter Principle, right? Where you are given a position where you're merely incompetent and you just stay there for life. And all that was scrapped afterwards.
No, I agree with that because I think it was a tough choice people faced. One of the problems with education is that I think the education department sidelined white teachers too quickly.
I think within the negotiations there was 5 years to replace public servants, right? As far as I remember.
It might have been.
And they're still doing it now. A friend of mine's mother is a teacher in Pretoria, and they were served with retrenchment notices in December.
I think it was done too quickly because I think we lost a lot of the institutional know-how.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the institutional knowledge. And so one of the reasons our education is in shambles is because of that, because you've had people who've known how to do it for a long time, but they were just cast aside. But then again, I don't know how you would have done that, because if you know what I mean, like if somebody comes in and is your boss, but you think you know better than them, and there was also, this racial, stuff going on. So I don't know how you would have done it, but it contributed to what we see now.
Yeah, well, you could just keep the meritocracy and then just change the management system, right?
I think so, but there is something to be said about institutional know-how, about the knowledge that's contained within you being able to understand how everything operates. Like, even if you're educated, when you get to a workplace, you still have to understand how everything works.
Oh yeah, believe me.
You still have to be shown the ropes. And I think...
We both do a degree and then go work in what you studied. It's just two separate things.
Do you see what I mean?
Things. Yeah.
So I think that's part of the issue as well. And I think that combined with what SATU is doing, basically ransoming kids.
Yeah, the union.
That's why we're messed up. I mean, we spend 6 times more than Kenya, but we get far less for our money.
Yeah.
So I think that is problematic in and of itself.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I'm an anarchist.
Okay.
And this is way off topic. But I don't think the governments of the world care, necessarily. They do just enough to be re-elected. Mm-hmm. And the ANC, in and of itself, and the DA as well, to some degree, we are useful chattel, right? We are useful fodder for them when election comes. Okay. And so Thomas Sowell, the great economist, said there's 2 things a political or elected official does. Okay. First priority, get elected. Second priority, get re-elected. No one knows what the third priority is because it's so far down the line and so divorced from the first 2. If we didn't have... I think that the overall issue in South Africa is this technocratic socialism that we have at the top. Okay. Espoused by by all the parties except the EFF, who are just far more left. Okay. But it's this notion that the state knows best. Okay. And we will constrain the private sector because we don't trust them. Okay. We will constrain them through regulations, the BE laws, and all the rest of it. All this will be for, it's all benevolence. The private sector won't change because they're racist, so we'll force them to change. And, look at us, we made them change. Whereas in the late 80s and the 70s, a lot of businesses went to court to hire black workers or black professionals in their ranks. That's not the majority by any means, please don't get me wrong, but it did happen a lot of times. Okay. So it's this notion that the state knows best, the government bureaucrats know best. Okay. And personally, selfishly, I think the incompetence of the bureaucracy has saved us from a lot worse.
In what sense? Than
today. Well, if we had Venezuela, the civil service in Venezuela is very efficient. Okay. If the ANC got away with what they wanted to, if you look at the policy documents, it's controlling everything through technocratic socialism. So it's not about control of the means of production. It's about the regulatory control of the private sector. Okay. And because they have incompetent civil service, they can never do it properly. So I think that saved us, quite a lot. But unfortunately, there's a lot of effects, like the education system, like the justice system, like all those things that just don't work for the majority of people.
I'd actually like us to explore the voucher system. Though I am caught in
now you're talking my language now.
I am caught in a couple, 2 minds because I'm trying to understand it better.
Yeah.
But at face value for me, because I read up on the Spark schools. I don't know if you know about the Spark schools.
I know of them.
The Spark schools spend as much on one student as the government does. It's basically the same.
It's about 75 grand a year or something. But
I don't have the exact figures,
Okay.
but I was reading that they spend pretty much the same.
right.
And so I was looking, the contrast in the quality of their education is quite vast between the two.
Yes,
So I think
one would think.
exploring that could be a possibility. I don't know how it would work in terms of
Well, it's very simple. You just let the state fund and let the private enterprise manage.
I hope so.
Because the state wants to fund and manage.
I see
the
that. I see
ANC.
that. It's very overladen with administrative largesse.
Yeah,
The public
yeah.
education.
Because the state has a vested interest in managing as well. Instead of, here's the thing: the greatest things we've done in history was never done by independent people. It wasn't done by the strong man. Albert Einstein didn't discover his equation. A lot of other people were working on it, and any one of them could have figured it out.
Okay.
Same with Alexander Graham Bell. He created the telephone, but there were many other people who were doing it as well at the same time. Thomas Edison, same thing.
Okay.
We are defined by trillions of decisions made by billions of people over time.
Okay, I agree with that.
And somehow, shit just happens. When people interact, create services, create goods, create needs and wants, not just the market, I'm talking about like ideas. The
I agree
concept
with
of
that.
democracy was not created by Aristotle.
No, I agree with that.
Many people created it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And to segue,
Yeah.
that's why I'm a big fan of cities. Because it puts smart people, educated people, ideas people in proximity.
Sure.
That's where you get jet engines of innovation
Right.
and growth.
And have you noticed?
Yeah.
Whenever the state tries to control one thing, it retards that completely.
Yeah.
We're still using the education system that was designed in 1870 to create Prussian soldiers.
Pretty much. It's like an industrial process.
It's a prison camp, right?
It's an industrial process.
You can't piss when you want to. You can't have a break when you want to. You're forced to sit in queues. And there's a bloody factory bell that rings every 45 minutes to tell you where to go. It's 200 years later and we still have it.
Yeah. For me, at least, that's why I think private education is actually better. I went to a private school, and a lot of people have that thing of, we end up at the same universities and stuff.
Yeah.
And my argument's always been is that there's more to life. It depends on what you value.
Yeah.
There's more to life than just simply a paycheck. You could get a degree in accounting
Yeah.
and just be an accountant, narrow focus, nothing else. I think the school system doesn't necessarily, the public school system at least, it doesn't necessarily develop
Even the private one.
the whole person.
Even the
It's
private
better.
one. Even
the
the
private
private one.
ones are actually better. in
They're
my opinion.
better, but I don't think they're optimal.
They're not optimal.
And unfortunately, parents think they do. Parents
Yeah.
think schools develop those critical skills or those critical development behavioral skills. And I don't think they do at the best of times. So parents sort of, leave that to the teachers. They can look after the kid and develop them. And yeah, it's not helpful. It's not helpful. We just need people to be far more, how can I explain? Just far more interested in the people around them, especially their children. Because I found that a lot of parents do not seem to worry too much. They think they can just delegate.
To everyone else, the responsibility.
Yeah.
No,
you got the
I
nanny,
get that.
you got the maid, you got the teacher, you got the driver, whatever. It's like, yeah, it's your kid. How's he going to develop critical thinking and find meaning?
That's actually a very interesting conversation, because I was reading this morning about the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Yes.
Jacinda Ardern, I think, and about her being pregnant, but she's Prime Minister. But then her husband, she said, I watched her press conference, she said the husband is going to be a house husband.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting because it does underline Peterson's point about why there aren't more female CEOs and top-end politicians.
Division of labor.
Something is going to be sacrificed.
Sure.
Most people just cannot have it all.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really interesting. I put that up for some of my friends, some of my feminist friends, because we've been having this ongoing conversation, and I'm like, not a lot of women actually want that, because I've got friends, both of them are doctors,
Mm-hmm.
but she stays at home now because their child's really small.
Oh, right. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I stay at home. Like I work from home.
Mm-hmm.
I work hard, I think,
Mm.
but I stay at home.
Yeah.
My daughter goes to school till 3. I pick her up,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife comes home later at 5. And
That works for you, though,
absolutely.
because you've got
But
flexibility.
I'm not a lesser father. I think I'm a superior one to most.
No, I think it's we live in a modern world. You got to be flexible.
Sure.
Like if I sit at home and I'm a writer, and I expect my wife who's working on, let's say, in the corporate world, if I
Yeah.
had one, not saying I do,
All right.
if I had one, it would be unreasonable to
Sure.
expect her to do all that kind of stuff because
Yeah.
I'm more flexible.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I fully agree with you.
So,
So basically, I mean, we're reaching near the end now. So basically, what are we saying? Are we saying anything?
I'm saying that racism is unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that people branch out. Cities are great. Joburg is fucking awesome.
It is awesome.
It is fucking awesome. It is the best city on this continent. The rest of it may be a shithole, but not here.
Even so, it's our shithole.
It's our
And we are
shithole.
proud of it.
And we're proud of it.
Sindile, my friend, thank you, sir.
Oh, it's
What
been
a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Sorry, I forgot
It's
how to
fine,
do that.
it's fine,
the
it's
handshake.
fine. It's been a pleasure, man.
Thank you, sir. And
Thank
you must come back. There's so much we could have done 4 hours easy.
Definitely.
It's just a bit hot in here.
It is. I'll be keen to come back.
Awesome.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. And where can people find you? Sorry, I forgot.
I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter. Don't do Instagram.
Are you on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. I just got on Twitter at Vabaza, Vabaza.
Okay. And then and Facebook, it's Sindile Vabanza.
Yeah, pretty much it.
100%. And yeah, anyone listening, follow Sindile. You will get angry and
Half
then
the time.
angry half the time. Then I just see Liverpool updates and like Real Madrid.
That's on the weekend.
And I'm like, oh,
That's
boring.
on the weekend.
And then on Monday, like he just frazzles your intuitions. It's worth following.
Yeah.
Sindile, thank you, sir.
Cool.
See you
Thanks,
soon.
man. Thanks, Ruben. Very nice. It is hot in here.
That worked well. Second time round.
So, was the camera battery, is that what limited us?
Memory card.
Oh, memory
You
card.
buy bigger memory cards apparently.